this form here, which is like it's a welcome. We're going to talk more about that in a minute. It's a commitment, and then they're going to get this tips for success. Okay, and the tips for success are things like dress comfortably. We encourage communication. Letters to your doctor. We want to give them this and say, hey, listen, we do want you to tell your, if you go back to the doctor, we want to write them a letter. Billing and payment questions, if they want, we can always answer those. Fee for, well, we took this out because right now we don't have a fee for missing appointments. And I can tell you right now, we are in the very minority with that. Every other group that I am in contact with, except for a couple, and I have a peer-to-peer group with a bunch of other physical therapy practices like ours. They all have cancellation policies, and they're strict with it. And Bruce and I have talked about it. We've talked to you about it, and we're just not sure how well that connects with our core business right now. And also, I think the jury's still out on missed appointment fees for us. I think eventually we'll have to go there, especially if we end up doing more cash business and less insurance business. But we don't have that right now. It's out. Did you know you don't need a doctor's prescription for physical therapy? All right. We need to be educating our people right away about this. Nobody knows that. They don't know that. They need to know that. Too many decades of needing a script for PT. Did you know we have exclusive offerings for multiple sclerosis, balance, dizziness, women's care will be in there soon. Okay. We're going to educate the people we have. Our best source of patients, the patients that we already have. So we're going to educate them about our other offerings. Guess what to do is Facebook and Twitter. Hopefully we have the time, one of us, to go through this with them. Hopefully in the front desk can go through that. The front desk is not going to go through this other thing with them. The commitment page, because I'm going to get to that later. That's for the physical therapist and the patient to decide on their own. Okay, so we're going to get to that kind of later. But the tips for success are there. That's going to be in their folder. And then we're going to do photo. Okay, they're going to do their photo at that point in the waiting room or in the room. I used to think that mattered. I don't think it does. They need to do the photo before they come back, before they get started. Okay, everybody got to have the photo right away. Don't do the photo after the initial evaluation for the first day, because I'll talk about that in a minute. Do the photo after they do their paperwork. Okay. So they got their folder, and there's also another one in there that says your therapist, and I don't know if I have that printed in here or not, but it tells them basically that we have all these great people, and we want to encourage people to work with different people. But then we want to give them the option, if they only want to see Paul, that they can do that. They need to make the front desk aware of that, if that's the case. But I think that, if you ever listen to me evaluate a patient, I always finish with, well, you're going to meet a lot of great people here. Today you got stuck with me. I'm terrible. Everyone else is better than me. You got stuck in coach, but Paul's first class. And that's how it's going to be. And I tell people that all the time because I don't want them always wanting to see me. I want to make sure that everybody here has access to the patients. And I truly believe that if Jim sees the patient after I do, that is not a step down. That is every bit as good. Actually, when any of you see the patient after me, it's better as far as I'm concerned. But anyway, the evaluation is the next step. Okay, so we bring them back. They did the photo. They're in the life cycle now, and they're starting to have this professional interaction with us. So now this is kind of where the physical therapist is, and PTAs don't just tune out, because you need to have this frame of reference of how we do things and how you can support it. And so that we're using our active listening skills when we do the evaluation, when we do our subjective exam. We do a nice comprehensive exam. All the physical therapists here do a great exam. We do it better than any other professional in any medical industry. That's been proven. And after that's done, we go through the exam, we do objective, and then we formulate our results. But then what do we do with that? Like, how do we create this plan of care for the patient? Well, when I did this talk, the goal was to say, how well are we as a profession creating a plan of care that the patient then sticks to and benefits from? That was what the talk was initially about. It wasn't as much a life cycle talk. And that's really important, because if I set up 12 visits for a patient and they come for 2, guess what? They didn't get better. If I set up 12 patients and they come for 2, we also, as a business, are going to fail, because we're not set up for that. We're set up for them to be set up and attend the number of visits that gets them better to the point that they want to be at. And that's it. If it's 2, great. They set up for 12, they come for 2, they get better, that's fine. Because we'll have created so much value with that person that they'll tell 12 people about us. we'd save them 10 visits. How well we explain that to them is where the win is. If we didn't tell them that that was going to take 12 and they got better in 2, they won't know how great we are. They'll say, oh, all physical therapists get people better in 2 visits. Not exactly. Not everybody knows how to do the vestibular thing. They just keep them string along. I mean, you know how it is. So we're going to talk about that later on as physical therapists. But so when I looked at this, how well are physical therapists creating a plan of care and then bringing the patient through that plan of care, I thought we're going to look at other disciplines that are similar. So we looked at the chiropractors. So the chiropractors have really interesting ways of doing this. We think about chiropractors, we think, well, you know, we're physical therapists. We think they're terrible, right? That's because they, you know, but that's not always the case. But then we think of abuse. We think of them maybe like manipulating kids. You know, this is not exactly the best way to think of these guys. But I mean, I can tell you right now that they do have, there are chiropractors out there that do a good job and that they're fine. I mean, they're not all evil. I mean, we just maybe think that way. So we go and look at how they manage this first visit. It's vastly different from us. And how do they keep people coming for so long? How do they get people to buy into what they're doing? How do they get this relationship? Well, they use different tools. And one of the tools that they use, they'll use these cool, they're actually really neat little visual things. Like this thing here. They'll sit down with the patient and say, here's a pyramid that starts with relief, goes to correction, maintenance, prevention, and wellness, right? Where do you want to fall on that pyramid? Okay? And so temporary relief, nobody wants to be there. We don't want to be temporary relief. Fix the problem, keep your health, all the way up to feeling your best, sports performance, things like that. It's kind of brilliant. It's like, let's bring these people in and talk to them about where they want to buy from this business. All right? And so they do that. I thought that was interesting. Another thing they do is they have this little chart here a lot of them use called the road to recovery. So now they start talking to people about visits. So this is days, weeks, months, and years. So this is like a time frame. And then this is, on the bottom is suffering, and on the top is optimizing. So what they do is they'll say, okay, these little white dots are visits, and here's how things can go for you. Like, if you can go up here on this time frame, you're using these visits, getting faster results, and then it's decision time. And you're going to say, I don't want to keep coming, and so eventually you're going to go back to here, and you're going to end up back in the chiropractor's office, and then here, and then back there, and then here. So what they're trying to do is prevent people from stopping and coming to their treatment before they've reached their goals. And then they say, well, if you keep coming, then we can reach your goals. Now, with what we do, there's at least a tablespoon of truth in here, because people might be feeling better, but they may not have a lumbar stabilization program. They may not have a rotator cuff strengthening program. Maybe they're just feeling better, but they're not actually fixed. And then they are going to end up back in our clinic, and we kind of know how that works. We try to prevent that. So on day one, we're not going to use this chart, but I'm showing it to you so you can see how other people operate. And what the value of it is that now what they do is they just keep seeing them like forever and ever and ever. That's not what we want to do, right? So, you know, our goal would be to get them to where they, somewhere in here would be, we've given you what you can do on your own. Now you go do it, and you don't ever have to come back here. That's the value we create. So we're looking for a long-term success. But I thought these models were interesting because these guys are really good at creating a plan of care and then getting people to stay. I mean, if you can get someone to see you once a month for the rest of their life, you're pretty impressive with your ability to integrate a plan of care. So I thought we can learn from that. That's interesting. But what they do, though, on the first visit is they create what's called a examination. This is a review of findings, is what this is called. So what they do is they go through and they say, okay, you know, you have this, I saw this on my x-ray. They legitimize their practice by using x-rays and different things. And then you have all these problems, and this is what it's going to be, this is what it's going to take to fix it. They give the patients, and they never provide treatment on the first day. I think they want people to take this and go forward and then get, like, I don't know why they don't do that, maybe, but I think they want them to believe in their problem or something. But that's called a review of findings, and that's what they do. So that's what the chiropractors do, and I thought it was interesting to look at it. So when we do our review of findings, and we all do it, it's not as formal as that, but I think what we all do is the first thing we do is we sit them down and we say, usually I'll get out the models, I've seen all you guys do it, we'll say this is your problem. You say this is your disc, this is your rotator cuff, this is whatever. And so we're basically taking that patient through a little medical review. We're teaching them the medicine behind what's wrong with them. So this is kind of how we do it. And then I'll usually use a metaphor, right? Like this is, I thought that was kind of cute. But I'll usually use something like the jelly donut for a disc. The king toes is for a rotator cuff, right? What we're trying to do is connect with that patient to the degree that we're able to put it in their words that they can understand. They love that. That is so important for us as physical therapists to do, because one of the things that the biggest problems they come in with is fear. And you guys see this every day, right? One of the biggest problems people have is, am I going to get better? Am I ever going to play tennis again? Am I ever going to run again? Am I ever going to be able to not have pain in my back? So when we go through that medical review of findings and we tell them what's wrong, we start to allay their fears. Oh, okay, other people have this. And that's kind of where we're going with the next part. So the next thing that we do, that I'll do with people, after we've explained what's wrong and how long and what we're going to do to fix it, and then we usually do treatment on the first day, is I'll tell them, is it okay if we text message you? This is before we had this form, though, that I was putting in inhability now. They should already be in inhability by now. So, and I'll talk to you about that in a minute, but so I would just say, we're going to send you some text messages, and this gives you the ability to send me a message. And I'll pull my phone out, so it's going to come right here. I usually respond within 2 or 3 hours because it comes on my email. And so people like that because, again, that's a way for us to have this relationship. We're building more of a collegial friend relationship than I'm the doctor, I'm the therapist, and I'm telling you what to do. They have access to me, whereas they don't have access to their doctor. They don't have access to other people. Probably don't have access to their chiropractor. They can send us a text message. They know how that works. I don't ever do it with email. Ability doesn't work with email. It only works with text messages. So, so the way to get set up in Ability, for those of you who don't know, is we log in here and going right through. Yeah. Okay. So we put them into Ability through the Add Patient page, and if anybody doesn't know how to do that, I'll show you later. I don't want to show everybody all at once, but you have your login, which looks like this. You log in. There's a big button that says Add Patient. All you do is put their name, their date of birth, because we can't be texting minors, and their phone number in, and it puts them in. Now, what Ability is going to do is it's going to send them a text message once a week. Hey, how's therapy going? And this is all pre-scripted. Okay, once a week. Hey, how's your physical therapy treatment this week? On the first weekend, on a Saturday, it's going to send them a message that says, hey, this is Herb Physical Therapy. By the way, you're allowed to text us over the weekend. You know, we've set up the scripting inside of Ability to be very much like a collegial, I'm texting you thing, but you're not all having to do it, all right? It's doing it on its own. And the patients will reply, so it'll come to my email then. So like, this is the email you get, you know, like new message for you, great is what it says, because the person was responding, I'm doing great, you know. And so that's how we use Abilities. It comes to us on our email. We click it, we go in, it shows us the message, and then we can reply to it that way, okay?
I have it come to my text.
You have it come to your text. You have it set up that way. So either which way, as long as you're using it, you know. So that's the Ability. So the next thing that we do after I tell the patient, we're still sitting there, we just did the review of findings, and we're going to say, you can text me anytime. They love that. That's great. We're building this relationship. And then we do photo. So I say, okay, I'm going to explain to you this thing called photo. It's the outcome survey that we did before. All right. And then, so what we do when we do photo, when we use it, is we need that report. So front office, I had to do the photo out in the waiting room, and you've explained it to them. And when you're explaining photo, and we went through the whole training a long time ago, but for those of you who don't remember, when you set it up for them, you say, listen, this is going to ask you a bunch of questions, and you just answer it as you would if you were having a problem. And so they do it, and they'll generate other questions. You guys passing notes back there?
No, I'm taking some notes.
Anyway, the photo explanation. So we're going to they're going to do the photo out in the front. You guys, the front office or the aides, whoever it is, you need to set that photo. That photo has to be printed up and in the chart before we go back before the therapist goes in. We need to have the results of the photo in the chart before we go in there. Because also, that score is going to tell us if the patient's all flared up. So before the therapist goes in, they're going to know. And the PTAs can do this too. Print up the results, and put it in the chart. We're going to know how bad they are, or if they're great. It's going to allow us to structure our exam a little better. But that's for beforehand. Now afterwards, the physical therapist uses photo to shape the expectations of the patient. Because what we do is we want to kind of create belief in our patients that what we're going to do for them over the next couple of weeks is going to work. Because if they don't believe it's going to work, guess what? It's not going to work. So we need to do everything we can to influence that. Using data is a nice way to do it, because, and here's what I do with it. Let's see if this works. We're going to have to be hooked up to the internet. Okay.
It's a joke you say.
Now we're going to explain your problem.
I got it. Motion.
How much your problem is impacting your function.
How much your problem's affecting your function.
And so the first thing we do is obviously ask you all those questions, and you go through and answer them. And it takes the aggregate or the sum of all those answers, and it gives us a number. And that number summarizes how much this problem is impacting your life and do the things that you want to do. So this can be anywhere on a scale of 0 to 100, this number. 0 would be like I can't get out of bed in the morning. 100 would be like an Olympic level athlete. So when we go through, you answered all your questions, and your photo came out to be 52 on that scale of 0 to 100. So, okay, that's what that is. And 52 is just like, we go down here, we can look at the questions. Like you had said, extreme difficulty doing heavy activities, a little bit of difficulty with bending and stooping. When it takes the sum of all those questions, it gives you 52 as your starting number, which is fine, that's what it is. But what we do with that is we take that number and we plug it into this database. So we have, the nice thing about this is I have access to all of these surveys that have been done, and they've been done in 12,000 clinics. There's been 14 million surveys. So if we look at all of these 14 million surveys that have been done by patients just like you all over the country, and a couple countries all over the world really, we have access to all this data. So what we do is we don't care about all these 14 million surveys. The only ones we care about are the 25-year-old females that look just like you, that have your problem of the lumbar spine pain and have we plug in your comorbidities. So like if you have diabetes, if you have high blood pressure, things like that, we're going to plug all that in there. And so now we're comparing you to other people who look just like you. So instead of 14 million people, maybe we're only comparing you to a smaller sliver of the 25-year-old females. And that might only be like 700,000. But the important thing is that we're comparing you to other people who are just like you, who have the same problem you have. So when we go in and we look at all that 700,000 people that look just like you, and again, we're not comparing you to like 85-year-old guys with ankle problems. We're just looking at the 25-year-old women with back problems, just like yours. On day one, when we go into that database and we look, their average score was 44. So now you have some frame of reference, something to compare to. And we say that, okay, so now we know that Kate is a 52 and the average person is a 44. So like if you were at a 20, I would say, oh geez, she's in bad shape, you have to be very careful with her. And then by the same token, if you were at like 80, you'd be like, well, what's she even doing here? She's totally good. And so that gives us a nice starting point and gives you some idea of where you stand compared to all the other patients who come in here. So 52 is where you're starting. Most patients start at 44, but we can use this in other ways too, and we do. So the next thing we do is we go back to this 700,000 women that just look just like you, and we ask the question, okay, did they get better from physical therapy for the back? And we can go and we can look in that database and find out. And we find out that yes, they got 9 points better after the physical therapy, because we have access to their surveys that they did at the beginning of their treatment and that they did at the end of their treatment. So we go through and we look and say, okay, 9 points better. Well, what does that mean for you? Well, for instance, the questions that you answered, you said you had extreme difficulty with heavy activities around the house. When you get that 9 points better, when you get to 61 from your 52, you're just going to have a little bit of difficulty around the house. Moderate difficulty with your usual hobbies would be no difficulty. No difficulty with bending and stooping, no difficulty with standing for an hour. So this is what we can expect when you're done with physical therapy. That's what it would look like for you to be done when you completed all the therapy. And because that's the average of all those people who've actually had therapy before, we can say that it's likely that we're going to be able to accomplish this with you. So now you have some sense of, oh, is this where I'm going to be able to go? Is this what I'm going to be able to achieve? So that 9 points, the next question, we know that it can help. We go back to this big database of, like I said, maybe a couple 100,000 people that look just like you, and we say, all right, how long did it take them to achieve that outcome? And we know that because we can take the average. We have their first score and their last score. So we go through it. The average person that looks like you that went through physical therapy, it took them 13 visits over the course of 55 days to achieve that outcome there. So on average, that's how long it takes physical therapy to fix this problem. So we're going to set up, that's what you can expect. Now, sometimes we can get people better quicker than that. It takes 11 visits. It takes 30 days. Sometimes it takes longer. It depends on what happens. Everybody's individual. We're going to treat you individually. But on average, like I said, that all these surveys that have been done, this is what we can expect, 13 visits over 55 days. So we're going to try to set some of those up today. We're going to try to do maybe 3 times a week for the first few weeks, and then we're going to scale back so that we can achieve these results down here. And we'll play it by ear as we go, and we'll reassess every 30 days or so, or even fewer, and see if you need to be done. So that's pretty much that.
Cut.
That's it. So let's see if I can figure out how to get rid of this. Maybe this one. Oh boy, that wasn't it. So yeah, we use photo to shape expectations for our patients, and this is really important because what are they going to expect? And this is something that we're giving them a reasonable expectation of where we're going to end up, which is a really valuable tool. So, all right, let me see where we end up. Where we were here. We're down in this guy somewhere. Yeah. All right. Any questions about the photo explanation and how we use it? Here we go. And it's like, the other thing is, we just gave them this big talk about what's wrong with them, what we're going to do to fix it, how long it's going to take. We've been very specific with this person, and that's important. We're giving them a roadmap for exactly how we're going to fix their problem. And, it's like the Australian guy said, you didn't hear this, but like, if you go to the brain surgeon, you don't want to go in and hear the brain surgeon saying, oh, we're going to go in, we're going to do a little bit of this, we're going to do a little bit of that, and like, we'll see how it goes. No. Like, you want them to say, we're going to go in, we're going to fix this, we're going to take this out, and that'll be it, and you're going to get better, all right? And that's kind of what photo allows us to be very specific. Our review of findings allows us to be very specific with people. People like that because, again, we're working on their fears. Are they going to get better? Okay? Because if they don't believe that physical therapy is going to work, then we're dead in the water. It's not going to work, ever. Okay, so that's the next thing. And then the next thing we can kind of look at is, we now have that number of 13 visits out there in that case. And we can use that, because the new thing with physical therapy, the new thing with a lot of different problems out there is like packaging things. Okay, so like you go somewhere, what people are afraid of from a financial standpoint, I can tell you right now, is that I'm going to have them come in, and then I'm just going to keep them coming forever, and there'll be no end to it. All right, they don't mind paying $20 a visit. They just don't want to do it for an indefinite amount of time. So what we say is, okay, it's going to take 13 visits, and it's probably going to cost you about $260 if you have a $20 copay. People like that idea that it's this package, that we've got a plan for them. Now, we're not guaranteeing that it's going to be that much, but that's kind of where the future of a lot of people, of what a lot of clinics are doing, are packages like that are doing more cash pay. We don't do cash pay, so we can be more open-ended with it, and we can do it sooner or later because we're an in-network provider. So that's a little different, but if we ever have to go to more of a cash out-of-network business, there's more of that package idea out there. So then, here's the thing. After we talk to them about this, hopefully we've done a good enough job of telling them and them believing that it's going to take this amount of time to get better. We need to get them on the schedule for those visits. And I can tell you right now, them going up front and setting up for the rest of this week, or just next week, or their next visit, that is not happening in hardly any other PT places outside of maybe Pittsburgh, I don't know. Almost always successful PT places set up all their visits for the plan of care. They say, Mrs. Johnson, we can get you the times that you like, you can go set them up, and then they set up all their visits. If they have to change them, they change them. And these are people who have cancellation policies. We don't even have a cancellation policy. Like, they're setting up 12 visits, and they know they're going to get charged if they don't do it. So, I mean, I think we can do that with people, and this is where we say, okay, now we need to listen to the patient. Are you in agreement with this? These are my findings. I'm advising you. Are you in agreement with this? Do you want to do this? This is where you can expect to be. And hopefully, you know, we've done our job, then they can do it, and that's kind of like the scripting, and you can only imagine all the problems that you'd run into with this, where people don't want to set visits up. Like, I've got busy schedule or whatever, I'm going away. And this was another thing that a different guy had said, well, if they don't want to set that package up, like, could you imagine if you go to get chemotherapy, and they're like, all right, we're setting all 12 up, and you're like, oh, I don't know, I got a pretty busy schedule. I don't know if I can do all that. Like, if they're waffling on setting up all the visits that they need, then did we really do a good enough job of explaining to them that this is how long it's going to take and this is how frequently you need to come? Then we need to evaluate our own stuff and say, okay, it's not going to be 3 days a week, it's going to be twice a week for 3 weeks, and then we can reevaluate. But that's kind of the bottom line, is that the reason it's different from physical therapy and chemotherapy is because of the value that they place on it. We're not asking them to come for 6 months. It's what you think in your own clinical mind, and each physical therapist makes different judgments on that. But the question is, are we going to go from scheduling one visit on Wednesday or just next week to, what I do with people myself is, I'll talk to them about how those 10 visits or 13 visits, okay, we're going to do, Kenny has recommended the following course, 3 times a week for 2 weeks, then 2 times a week for 2 weeks, then once a week for 2 weeks, I'll even write that in, you know. And then what they can do is, so the model is that they take this and they go to the front desk with it, and they give it to whoever's making appointments for them. Or if I have time, I can sit there and I can open up a schedule and I'll make those for them. So the idea is that, not that I told them to do 12 visits, is that they believe and agreed that that's what they want to do. Because they want to get better, because they know the results. And so when they have the visits, they're more likely to come, and they're more likely to get better, and we're going to achieve our goals. So block booking is what this is called, and the fact that we're not doing it makes us in the minority. So this was another piece of scripting that people use, and I do use this a lot, is if you were my. So think of it, if you really care about this person, you believe in the plan of care you just gave them, why would you let them do anything less? If you were my mother, I would have you come into, how often do you think I should come? Well, if I were you, if it's someone my age, I would come in twice a week for 6 weeks for this. I need to get stronger. My shoulder's not going to work. If you were my grandmother, I would have you come in X number of visits. We're not selling, again, back to the Alec Baldwin, we're not selling something we don't believe in. We're not selling people on stuff. We've come up with an idea that we believe is going to work. They should want to do it, and we should want to do it for them. And anything less is us not doing a good job. So if you were my aunt, if you were my loved one, I would definitely set this up for you in this way, or I would get orthotics. If you were my mom, I'd go over to Dick's and I'd buy some good shoes, not those crappy ones you have on. I'm not even benefiting from that, right? So if you were my mom, I would go get a cane. I'd spend $9 because you're limping, you know? And because we got to get people over their objections. So another thing is during the course of the treatment, people have to have what's called, and this is kind of been studied, that they should have what's called a significant emotional event. So that's like, they should connect with us. That's it. I mean, everybody does something different. Everybody knows what I do. Whatever you do, they should have a connection with us. The rule of 9s is like, when I have a patient come in, I should get to know 9 things about you. You should get to know 9 things about me in groups of 3. That's how relationships are kind of built. That's how studied. But I mean, we want to think about how are we letting them. I've always told everybody, you need to get to know your patient, but you also need to let them get to know you. So that's it. We're trading those 3 things. One at a time. Where do you work? What do you do? What do you like? You have to be trading those. And then we tried other ways to make things fun. We throw the bees on them. You guys can think of anything you want to make this a memorable experience, right? So that's the first visit. The treatment sessions, it's one of these things like, and I've said it before, we can't let people walk out of here. The 6 most important words in physical therapy are these. When do we see you next? We can't have people leaving without setting up visits. Hopefully they block book, they might not have. We don't do it now, so those, in our business, those are the 6 most important words. When do we see you next? Should be in the habit of asking that every person as they leave. It tells them, A, we care about seeing you again. B, get on the schedule.